Becoming a good painter is all about having the right tools and the right technique. Today, you will learn the 10 best tips to using a paintbrush for beginners. And it all starts with tip number 1. The best paintbrush for cutting in is the Wooster Shortcut. Now, this brush is called a shortcut for 2 reasons. It's missing a handle. That is actually good. So you can get up close to your painting surface, to your wall, and to your ceiling. That makes it a lot easier. Secondly, it's because this is a faster way to get clean cut-in lines faster. If you've watched our other painting videos on this channel, I've been using the Purdy 2.5-inch sash brush for a very long time. But take a look at that. That is a big brush. That requires a lot more skill and a lot more practice to get good cut-in lines at the ceiling. So much so, I don't even use this for cutting in anymore. I absolutely love the shortcut. I'm gonna let you in on a secret. Pro painters use this, but they're not gonna tell you it is that good. And that brings me to tip number 2, which is how to load properly. Just using a painter's pail, and it has a removable liner in there, and you can see you just want a few inches of paint, and you're just gonna take your paintbrush and you're gonna dip just the tip into the paint. I don't know if you guys can see that. You're gonna dab it on one side and dab it on the other. And the reason I'm dabbing is just to remove the excess paint. So when I'm done, your paintbrush should look like this. We call it loaded because it has a lot of paint. You wanna have enough that it's loaded but not drippy. So let's take this onto the wall for tip number 3, move towards your cut-in line. You don't wanna just cut in the ceiling and start straight. That's gonna be very, very challenging. Start with our brush loaded, and we're actually gonna start low and then push up. So I'm gonna start about 1 inch away and then just push up towards the ceiling. See that? I'm starting low and then I'm going high. That is a lot easier, just to ease up towards your ceiling or whatever you're cutting in. And then we're just gonna go back over that to smooth it out. So we start low, go high. Here we go, boom. And we even that out. Tip number 4 is to feather out your cut-in line. This is something we always do with painting, is you always have to feather your edge. That just means we want to wisp this nice and light. It has to be light paint. You can't have a solid line. We're gonna be rolling this, and in order for those to match and to blend, this has to be feathered, so make sure you do that. Step number 5 is keep a steady pace. When you slow down, when you're holding your paintbrush, you're actually gonna start to see its shape. When you speed it up, that equals smooth and straight, so keep that in mind. All right, so let's give this a go here, keeping in mind speed. So we're gonna start low, go high. So as you can see, when you speed things up, you actually can do a better job. So that brings us to tip number 6. I'm usually painting about 12 inches at a time. When you cut in, you want to do about 12 inches, maybe a little bit more as you get a little bit better. You want to go over it, smooth it out, feather it out, and check that you've covered everything nicely. You can see I've gone just about 12 inches. I just ran a little bit of paint, so I'm going to have to reapply my paint. So tip number 7 is please don't use painter's tape. I don't know who started the rumor that people do painter's tape at the ceiling, but you're just not going to see this done. It's going to aggravate you and frustrate you if you tape out your ceiling, and it's going to give you a result that you are not going to be happy with. So you can do this. It just takes a little bit of practice, and that brings me to our next point. Tip number 8 is perfect your line. That is just a painting term for fix any of your mistakes, because it's going to happen. It doesn't matter if you're learning or if you're professional, everybody makes mistakes. So say we are cutting in and you might get some paint on your wall. What do I do now? How do I fix that? I'm just going to take our cloth and wipe the paint away. And this is why we perfect our edge right away while the paint is still wet, because when it's wet, it will wash away. I've gotten all the paint off. If you're trying to perfect an edge with baseboard, trim, or crown molding, I just take my putty knife and I'll take a cloth on top of that. And if you need a crisp edge and you're trying to clean up, I will just run it like this on the inside. Everyone does make mistakes. What matters is how you correct them, and this is one way to do it. Tip number 9 is paint your trim first. It's so much easier to paint your trim and then your walls, because it's a lot easier to cut in carefully onto your trim. And if you get some paint up on your trim. It's a lot easier to wipe up your trim than it is to wipe up on your walls, especially if you have texture. Always paint trim first and then your walls. You'll just get much better results. And you're gonna get so good at your cutting in, you're gonna do it freehand. That's even better. Tip number 10 is always keep a wet edge. What I mean by that is that whenever you're cutting in your ceiling and your wall and your base, make sure that cut-in line is wet when you start to roll, because it needs to be wet paint meeting wet paint for it to blend perfectly. If your cut-in line dries and then you roll, you're gonna get picture framing, which is why I actually recommend you paint in sections when painting with latex paint, because it does dry fast. So I hope those help you out, guys. We'll have more painting tips right here in this video. I'll link to some more in the description for you. And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.